What's up, everybody? JJ Buckets here. You already know, you're on the channel. You can read the name. And we are here to talk basketball.
James gets it back. Caruso up to James for the slam.
Now, for today's video, I am back with the draft series continuing, and the candidate, as you can tell by the thumb and probably the title, I'm not sure. I make these videos obviously before I figure those things out, but it's Davion Mitchell, right? We are going to look at his strengths, weaknesses, his potential fit with the Raptors, the case for drafting him, and the case against. So without further ado, let's hop right into the video. As always, I'm going to lead things off with the player strengths, and for Davion Mitchell specifically, his athleticism, really catches your eye right away. I think it shows up on both ends, and his extension of that. He is a very high effort player, I would say, both on offensive and defensive ends, but specifically we're going to talk about the defense first because I do think that is probably his biggest standout. I think Mitchell is an elite perimeter defender. He's very good at just staying in front of his guy and really just giving some great shot contests as well. I think that is something that should get most scouts excited about him and what he can do on that end at the NBA level. Offensively, I think he's obviously very good at creating his own shot, particularly off the dribble. He's very talented because he has a great handle and he creates space for himself well. I think he's really good in half-court sets at just playing a very good just change of pace style. And what I mean by that is he's very good at just kind of lulling defenses to sleep before just really exploding into whatever he's going to do on that shot, whether it be a pull-up jumper, whether it be attacking the rim. He's very good at that. And speaking of his finishing ability, I think he's really crafty around the rim. I think it's really fun to watch him attacking the basket because he does a good job just adjusting to whatever the defense is going to give him and just pulling out the right finish, to get that bucket down. And like I said, it's a fun watch. It really is a fun watch. Overall, I just think he has a pretty smooth and polished offensive game, especially with the improvements that he's had as a three-point shooter and as a playmaker. It's really rounded out his game pretty well, and there's good reason to be excited about what he can do offensively. We're moving on to the weaknesses next, and the first thing here that I want to talk about isn't necessarily an outright weakness, but I think it is a discussion that needs to be had. He's obviously 22 years old and just finished his third season of college ball, right? The two things that I want to talk about with that are, A, he's obviously gonna have less time for improvement once he's in the NBA. You're gonna expect his game to just translate immediately into production at the NBA level. But the bigger thing here that I do at least kind of question is, as a third-year player, as a player that's more polished, more grown into his adult body, playing against college players, how much of your production is maybe a little skewed because of that? Just something that I think is worth questioning. Past that, with his actual weaknesses, he's not great at getting to the free throw line. I think he was averaging something around like 2 free throw attempts a game, and I think you got to be better at that, at the NBA level. That is a big thing. Free throw shooting is huge. And the other part of that is, even when he was getting to the free throw line, he's not a good free throw shooter. He shoots in the 60s. He's consistently shot in the 60s for his entire college career, and that number is going to need to go up. And it's frankly a good segue into the next thing I want to talk about, where we obviously saw an improvement in Mitchell's shooting ability in this season, particularly from the three-point mark is what I'm talking about here. How much of that is here to stay? My thing is, free throw shooting is usually a decent indicator with prospects as to their shooting ability, and as was just mentioned, he is not a great free throw shooter, and I question a little bit whether or not his three-point shooting from this season is going to be something that sticks around. Hopefully it is, hopefully it does, but it is a little up in the air with that if you ask me, and I think only time will really tell there truly. Past that, I think he suffers from tunnel vision a lot when he attacks the basket, and he does play a little out of control. As I said in the strengths, he is good at attacking the basket, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have his moments like that where he just kind of, doesn't know what he's doing because he gets stuck in an unfavorable position. And frankly, he gets stuck in an unfavorable position a lot because he doesn't really have a good feel for where the help is coming defensively. I've seen a good chunk of plays where he'll drive into his man and the help defender rolls over and he just can't feel him. So as a result of that, he ends up getting blocked or he ends up putting up a really bad shot. It's not encouraging to see. Past that, he improved as a playmaker. This is another area that I talked about as well, like his shooting. But I don't think he really should be the primary playmaker on any team. I think he's more comfortable as a scoring guard who playmakes every now and then, which is fine, but yeah, it is what it is. He's not going to be a Steve Nash for any team out there by any means. And the last thing I kind of want to briefly touch upon is obviously his size isn't really that great. He's 6'2", and he'd be a natural fit at the point guard position. And obviously you already kind of have Freddie and Malachi that are not huge guards, but I will get into that more when it comes to the fit and the case against. I'm not going to dwell on it too much here. Let's talk about the fit. With him, I think in all likelihood he's a bench player for your team, or for this team specifically, for the Raptors right off the bat, because honestly, I can't really justify personally starting him over Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr. I think both those players are better, and I think both those players have obviously shown you enough in the NBA that I think they get the starting nod over Mitchell. I think in all likelihood Mitchell is just going to be a scoring guard coming off the bench for the Raptors, at least early in his career. And even then, you already have Malachi coming off the bench, so it's not a seamless fit by any means. And I guess in that regard, it's not an awful one because I do think Malachi gives you a lot more as a playmaker, where Mitchell can obviously just be a more natural scorer and can give you bench production in that way. So I don't think they necessarily get in each other's way, but I guess, you're still rolling out pretty much a 2-guard or 2-point guard rather, set off the bench consistently with these guys. And it's not the most exciting thing to think about, frankly, because if you're just looking for scoring production off the bench, I think you can go out in free agency and find that. But I think with him, it's more so the potential upside of seeing him grow into just a consistent shot creator, and maybe if his development goes well enough, a closer eventually in his career. But as discussed earlier, that eventually is going to have to come reasonably quickly because he is already 22 years old. Yeah, I mean, the fit isn't the most natural here. I'd be lying if I said it was. So what's the case for drafting Davion Mitchell? I think shot creation is a very obvious strength of his offensively. I've talked about the defense. Defensively, I think this guy fits on any team, and I think he can be a very good defender at the NBA. I think that's exciting to think about. But offensively, shot creation is the thing you're really kind of hanging your hat on, because I think if his development really is that good, yeah, you have a guy that you can potentially just give the ball to in close moments at the end of the game and just say, go get us a bucket. And we all know that the Raptors need a player like that. So I think that really is just the strongest case for taking him here. Obviously, I've talked about the fit. It's not the most natural, but I guess this is one of those situations where if you are taking him, you are convinced that his talent is good enough to, or his upside is good enough to outweigh the fact that he's not the most natural fit for what your team needs. And you can rework your roster around him thereafter if he does turn into that good of a player. It's just all about how much, I guess, that you really believe in him and you really believe in the improvements that he's gonna have at the NBA level. The case against drafting Mitchell. He needs to be productive right out of the gate in the NBA. He's 22 years old, so you need him to show up and immediately show you signs that he's gonna be a good NBA player. Obviously, he just does not have as big of a window to be patient with, I think. Past that, point guard depth isn't really something that the Raptors lack, and frankly, you already have a fairly exciting prospect there in Malachi Flynn that is kind of on a similar timeline. So do you really want to throw another guy into the mix there? Do you really think Mitchell has that much higher of a ceiling that you want to essentially, like I was talking about in the previous section, just run 2 point guards off the bench? And frankly, I don't think the skill set of Mitchell is one that is unique enough to really warrant throwing him into the mix here. And he could realistically just bottom out as just a good rotational scoring guard and just nothing more than that. So that does it for me today. What do you folks think? This is the first time that I filmed a video where I just left a pinned comment and let you guys decide who you wanted me to talk about. So naturally, a lot of you guys wanted me to talk about Mitchell. I'm not the biggest fan, but I imagine at least some of you are. So comment below and let me know why you think Mitchell is the guy for the Raptors. Other than that, you know the usual drill here, folks. Like the video, it doesn't take a lot of time and it helps the algorithm a lot in terms of reaching a bigger audience. So I super appreciate every time you do it. If folks are new here, subscribe to the channel as well. I've already talked about the huge, I guess, disparity in terms of the people watching these videos that aren't subscribed. And like I said, just hit the button. Just hit the button. You can always change your mind in the future. Other than that, that is going to do it for me here today. And I am out of here.